How's it, everybody? I'm Trevor Beach, and this is my art YouTube channel. I'm going to be demonstrating some of my new artworks and things that I use, and hopefully share some tips with you. So please stay tuned, and as you can see above, please subscribe. Now, I just want to give you some tips on boards that I use, and I go and I buy the MDF. You can get a 3mm, 6mm, depending on what suits you best. The thicker is obviously, the bigger you go, the thicker you should use. That stops warping. Typically the A4 and A3 size, I use MDF board. I like to sometimes buy the white, one side is white, one side is, and this you can find from kitchen cabinet guys and that sort of stuff. And what I typically then do is, over this I prime it, and with the priming I use a gesso, which I make myself. And if you go into Pinterest or any of those type of places, you can find some good recipes for it. My recipe that I use is purely just it's like 3 ingredients. The first ingredient that I use is a decent high quality white PVA paint, and I normally I really spend a lot on that because that's the basis. To that I add a wood glue, and I probably just a cup or so of wood glue to probably about 4 cups of the paint, and then to that as well I add a cup of baby powder, talc. And then what I do, a little bit of water, and I blend that. And what I do for blending, and just another quick tip, is I use an electric screwdriver that I have, a cordless screwdriver. And in that I've actually taken from an old, one of your coffee creamer frothers. I've taken the end of that and I've put that onto that, and I use that as a stirrer. You can also just use any sort of blending thing. And just mix up the paint until it's a medium consistency. It mustn't be too thick. It must be a little bit thicker than normal acrylic paint. And then with that I use a roller, and I roll it onto that paint. I give it one coat, let it dry for a couple of hours, then I sand it lightly, paint again, then I sand it lightly, and I do this 3 or 4 times. The reason for that is I've got to get a nice thick layer between the paint and the board. What I have found in the past is if I do only one layer and I paint, if I scratch it slightly or I knock it, or it actually chips through down to the wood. So good couple of layers, and that is my primed boards. What I do is I'll go to the local hardware store and I get them to cut the sizes for me. And I go A4s. You can actually buy a full sheet, which is normally like 2.5 meters by 1.5 or something, and I get them to cut up a whole lot of pieces, different sizes that make up that. And then I come home and I paint with a gesso, prime it, and then I leave it for a day or 2 to dry. Alright, so that's the tips, just some of the tips that I use when I'm using the thinner boards. And those are not the only resources I use. I also use a canvas board that you can get from your art stores, and that's already a canvas textured board. But not only that, I also stretch my own canvases over onto frames, which I'll be sharing with you at a later stage. And all of those I use the primer as I've just explained. So, if you want to see how I do the rest of them, please feel free to join me, to subscribe, and you shall see some more of the tips and tricks that I'd like to share with you. Thanks a lot.